All right, welcome everybody to our 7th feedback session on bylaws for the NCAC, Article 7 subcommittees. I'm Nancy Vandell, and I'm going to just ask everybody to introduce themselves since it's a small group.
Tom Syke.
Susan Schomburg.
Barb Triplett.
Everett. Oh, go ahead.
Barbara Triplett and Mark Everett, our chair of the NCAC. Thank you for joining us. I think we have three more. I'll just read off the names. Wyatt Angelo from our committee and Hillary Gibson. A frog in my throat. And Bill Bush. So thank you all for coming on a beautiful Saturday afternoon to join us for a hot topic. Because all of you have attended before, I'm going to dispense with the introductory slides and we're just going to go directly to the presentation. So I'm going to share. And we have several places to have some discussion today. Basically, like all of our feedback sessions, we're here today to get your input on what our committee is suggesting. So there's one suggestion that kind of came outside of the committee meeting from yesterday. So far, our members have not been opposed to it, but we'll discuss that today. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. So we're going to present the recommendations for changes. And so you'll see a little bit of a difference in the formatting. We have the proposed text and then the original editorial revision, which is from the bylaws that were approved at the October meeting that were reformatted to Robert's Rules of Order and had some just purely editorial revisions. So that's what the information on the right is. We're going to be presenting the reasoning behind the changes and then ask for your input. So the article is broken down into an introduction section, and then it goes into the bylaws subcommittee and the nominating subcommittee, the two standing committees we have at the moment, and then into other subcommittees. And then we're going to talk about some related sections that come out of Article 5 meetings. Does that sound okay? Okay. So on the introduction portions, topic 1, section 1, we're starting out a little bit different formatting. We're talking about the reasoning behind the changes that you're going to see shortly. So what we've done that we're going to describe to you is we've defined what a subcommittee does and we compare it to a task force because sometimes we hear those terms used interchangeably and they're really quite different. We're highlighting that the NCAC chairperson is a facilitator as opposed to somebody who appoints people for positions and does other decision-making things. And thanks to Mark and the other officers, they are very supportive of that direction. The original text was inconsistent on that. In some cases, it said we should appoint, and other places it said we should elect members. We've added a request for information from subcommittee volunteers as they apply for positions, and which has been what's been happening over the past year. And then we clarified a section on removal of a subcommittee member. So moving on into the actual wording now. The wording in the existing document talks about subcommittees making a recommendation to the general membership by majority vote of the subcommittee membership. Subcommittees shall record and provide minutes of subcommittee meetings to the secretary. So we've added an introductory paragraph saying what a subcommittee is. And what it is responsible for considering, investigating, and making recommendations on submatter of interest to the NCAC. A task force is one or more members charged with implementing assigned actions that are not subject to Oregon Public Meeting Law and that do not involve policy. So an example of a task force might be the communications coordinators that we talked about under Article 4 officers that are doing task-oriented things like managing the website, managing who sends out newsletters and that kind of thing, very task-oriented that doesn't require the membership to agree. Are there and then we'll get through this, then we'll have discussion. So the original proposal, the current bylaws say that the chair shall seek subcommittee membership that reflects a cross-section of the community interests and viewpoints. And we kind of expanded and changed this. We're suggesting the chairperson shall communicate a request to the membership for volunteers for subcommittees. Subcommittee members should reflect a cross-section of the community. So we had a discussion about this interest and viewpoints and what a cross-section of the community should be. And our subcommittee felt that it's hard to define that. You know, is it geographic? Is it the type of membership that it is? So we've simplified it somewhat by saying cross-section of the community, and then we may take, when we go to the policies and procedures, which is a future document, we may try to define that further, but we would appreciate your input on that. And then we're adding, volunteers should indicate a willingness to serve by submitting a notice of interest to the chairperson. The notice of interest should include a brief biography, including any relevant qualifications. And actually, I think in other areas, we say we should submit a notice of interest to the info@NCAC email. So maybe we should actually look at changing that. Just put that in green. Okay, and then the last slide for this section is the original, the current bylaws are saying subcommittee members with 3 consecutive unexcused absences may be removed from the subcommittee by the chair. And it didn't say whether that meant the NCAC chair or the subcommittee chair. And we're suggesting subcommittee members with excessive absences may be removed from the committee by the executive board. The NCAC shall have 2 standing subcommittees, bylaws and nominations. We'd like to change nominations to nominating to be a little more consistent with most organizations. And then, I should put that in red, huh? And then members of both subcommittees or any other standing or ad hoc subcommittee formed by the NCAC should be voted upon by the NCAC general membership. So the only change there from the current bylaws is that we're adding in standing or ad hoc subcommittee. And basically the difference is standing, as defined in the first paragraph, is that you're going to have those committees every year. They're going to continue. They should be elected at the beginning of the year. They'll continue all year. And then ad hoc is something that might have a special purpose. So a special purpose might be the community plan subcommittee, because it's going to have a beginning and an end, and won't be happening every year typically. All right, so time for you guys to talk. If you could please put an indication in the chat that you are interested in talking. We can't really see hands necessarily. In fact, I can't even tell who's all in the meeting right now. See, oh, well, we've had some more people join us. Hi, Jeff and Sarah. So Sarah Absher, Director of Community Development at Fertility County, has joined us, and Jeff Wetzel, our secretary, but more importantly, our illustrious tech support for our committee, has joined us as well. So please just let us know in the chat if anyone would like to talk about any of these different areas here.
I don't see anyone commenting in the chat just yet.
Okay, so we'll move on. Thank you, Susan. So the bylaws subcommittee, we've made a few changes on that. I think we have a chat now.
Barbara Triplett has a comment. She
okay.
just popped in.
Okay, hi, Barbara.
Yeah, I have
go
a
ahead
comment. I have a comment about your change that the subcommittee membership should reflect a cross-section of the community. That seems to me, by taking out interests and viewpoints, both of which we should consider, that you're making it less I think you need to have some limitations in, as what you're saying about cross-section. Do we want people with different interests? Absolutely. Do we want people with different viewpoints? Absolutely. Do we want people that represent different geographic locations within the Nescoin area? Absolutely. Are you going to get all of those things every time? Probably not, but you're going to try your best to get a cross-section. And by just saying should reflect a cross-section of the community doesn't give any specificity, enough specificity so that people know what it is you're talking about.
Let me
That's my-
respond.
That's
Let me
my
respond to
impression.
that, please.
Sure.
Barbara, the theory here is that the more specific we get, the more likely it is we're going to forget some interest. So the theory is sort of like when patents are granted, the more general you are, the more powerful and inclusive it is. And that's the idea. How we go about making sure that that's true is something we can talk about in the details of the policies and procedures. But the reason for deleting that was it was too narrow and we wanted to broaden it. So rather than listing out everything we could think of and something we would surely forget, we are going to make it less specific and just general, and we'll help. We would enjoy some help in fleshing out what the various interests and viewpoints are.
Yeah,
I'm not
the
sure
other
I'm not
the
sure
other
I
thing-
buy that, but I will wait and see how you handle that in the policies and procedures. Unfortunately,
appreciate-
there's going to be a lag period where there won't be policies and procedures that are approved, and so you could run into some trouble there.
I really like your comment, Barbara, and let me just tell you, in addition to what Tom spoke about, we struggled in our meeting to figure out how would we get that when we send out a request for someone to apply for a position. How would we even find out what their interests and viewpoints are for a given topic? Let's say bylaws or nominating. That's what our struggle was, and so we like that we should be able to get people with different interests and viewpoints or different types of membership types or different geographical locations. And maybe the geographical locations would be okay, but the interests and viewpoints, if you have any suggestions on how we could tackle that, they would be very welcome, because that was really why we decided it might be better to strike that.
Well, I would suggest that when you have a call for applications for subcommittee membership, that you ask them, what are your interests with regard to specific issues that you expect will come up over the year, viewpoints. It's hard to hide where your property exists. That's fairly commonly known. But I think you ask that of your candidates for the selection process, and give them an opportunity to tell you what they see as what their contribution could be to the subcommittee.
Okay, so I agree with you about you can ask them what their contribution to the subcommittee could be. I'm just thinking, when I filled out that application for the bylaws subcommittee, I did put in some of my interests, and you raise a good point there. I'm sorry, Tom, what would you like to say?
Yes, we could add interests and viewpoints into the notice of interest, the last sentence. That certainly doesn't hurt.
Down
anything.
here, down
Mhm.
here.
Yeah, and that's kind of where it belongs.
What would you think of that, Barbara?
Yeah, that improves it in my opinion.
Mhm.
Like here? And
Yes, of course, the difficulty is you're not going to know what all the issues are going to be coming up in the next year.
Exactly.
But I think
Yeah.
you can get an idea of, and you never know what a subcommittee member is thinking until they actually vote.
Mhm.
But I think that telling people that you're going to be interested in having what I would consider a balanced subcommittee is a goal.
Good point. Okay, any other discussion on this item before we get to I see that Bill has a comment and Jeff has a comment. And Bill has 2 comments, so grammar comments. So, okay, any other comments though on Barbara's input here? Does this sound
I mean,
okay to
my
people?
comment is pertinent.
Okay, please go.
The first thing I want to point out is that the typical situation is we are just trying to find bodies to fill the committee, and having a balanced committee is an aspiration. And I think and I think it's worth putting aspirational language in the bylaws, but I think we have to kind of like put it in there knowing that it's just kind of like, this would be nice. And I think to Tom's point, the more specific we get, it's just sort of creating lawyerly problems because what are we going to do if if people think the chair, the committee that was selected by the chair is not balanced? Like, all they can do is vote it down.
Yeah,
so
the chair won't be selecting anything, it'll be elected, but
that's what I mean, that
Yeah.
there'll be like, you're given a slate,
mhm,
and if you don't like it, you can vote against it.
mhm.
So I almost think that it's not necessary to put this in the bylaws, because the enforcement mechanism is that the expectation of the community that the chair is not going to pack a committee with everyone all on like who has one viewpoint or something like that. So I think it's okay to put aspirational language in here, but I think given that when the rubber meets the road, we don't really have a mechanism to produce a balanced committee other than the chair can kind of do their best or the nominating at out of all the people who volunteered. But like in the past year, like we really wanted to stay away from picking people. Like I don't know if Mark, you want to speak up about this, but Mark's bias has been really, let's let the people like the membership of the NCAC pick the committee and not weigh in and not put our thumb on the scale. So I get the aspiration and why we like, it sounds nice to like want balanced committees, but I don't know if you can really get there by putting words in the bylaws.
Good point, Jeff. I think that is one reason we have should instead of shall to indicate that aspirational language. But so your input would be to make it simpler. And
yeah, I think so. And I have a few other comments not
Oh, go ahead.
related to this once we're done on this one.
okay, Mark.
And I agree with kind of with what Jeff said. I do believe that I mean, I firmly believe that the chair should not pick committee members. I just, the membership should do that. That should be the work of the membership. And I do think that, I mean, I just exactly what Jeff said, we can have that language in here, but we do struggle, and going forward, we may struggle with finding committee members to fill committees, just to do the work. And the more you narrow it, the more people may say, I'm not going to apply. And it does come down to the vote in the end. It does come down to the membership vote.
I'm realizing as we're talking here that we actually don't have anything in here saying that the subcommittee members will be elected. They're over in nominations and elections section of Article 4, and we didn't actually put in here. So it really does belong in a related article section that we should have covered. But it's very clear in the bylaws in Article 4 that these members will be elected. So this is more the procedure for applying. Yeah. But as we're talking, I realize it's confusing to just read it in this section. So I'll just state that it is in Article 4.
We're going to have some editorial smoothing after we get all done, because we've torn it apart, and when it gets put together, it may be a bit ugly. So
right.
Yeah.
But I am gonna go back here and say there are other related sections in and Article 4. Officers.
Then if you put a
Okay.
comma before the last and, then I'll be happy.
Here,
Not there. I'm talking about in this.
in the
slide.
document.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second to last line, put a comma in front of the and.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay.
So much relief.
And Bill, we need to get to you too.
And then there's
So-
another comment from Hillary at the, that's come in as well. Or she would like to ask a question and make a comment.
Okay, so Hillary, before we get to you, I'm gonna get to Bill, who's made a couple of comments about nominations versus bylaws. So why don't you feel free to speak? You're on.
Well, it might seem sort of minor, but that is just a common thing I used to grade for on papers, that in a list like that, the items should be parallel in terms of what they were construction wise. And so if you switch to nominating, you're now using a noun as one item and a verb, transitive verb as the other. Whereas if you have bylaws and nominations, the two things on that list are both nouns.
That's a true statement.
That is a true statement. I'm thinking. So you would put you're saying we should leave it at nominations.
Well, it depends if you want to be
Consistent.
grammatically correct or if you just want to go freeform.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, it's like I hear your point. I think this actually came from me of everybody and
Yeah.
on the committee,
We-
and,
we
and
all-
it's because I'm so used to nominating committees as being what these committees are called. That nomination sounds funny to me, but I'm fine with changing it. So okay, so
That's an editorial. It'll be taken care of.
yeah, Tom will decide. I think he'll probably end up changing it back to nominations. Okay, so
Get on
Jeff,
it.
you are reminding me that you had other comments, and then we'll get to Hillary. Does that sound okay?
It's fine by me.
Okay.
Okay, so we should not ever put an email address in the bylaws. There
So
are
we
17 different ways that might change sometime in the future.
I think. So we need to change it then. We're out the other places we've put it, and we've kind of
Yes.
thought of that. So we just need to call, what would you call it, Jeff?
I mean, you can say contact
NCA.
let's see, volunteers to the chairperson, or like I don't think you need to say in the bylaws how you contact the well we probably need a name for like the officers.
NCAC email,
Yeah,
because people don't have the chair's email typically, right?
But like, so suppose that like in 5 years, like so many people are using like super chat or something that's the main way we communicate. Like it should just be like it should just be assumed that there's a way you contact the secretary, and you have a generic term for like contact, like at the contact point or contact information or like contact channel.
As specified in
Right.
the.
Yeah. So
would you object to having it in the PNP?
well, since that is more frequently updated, that seems appropriate to have it there. So
Okay. Looks like we may need to do fast track on at least a simplified PNP.
Yeah.
and
So
to
something
Barb's-
like this, as specified in the a notice of interest.
are specified in the PNP. Is that what you mean?
No, in the job application.
Oh, okay. Well, that
It's not-
assumes that we have something called a job, yeah.
Chairperson shall communicate a request to the membership for volunteers as specified in the committee position request.
That's all wordsmithing. We can figure that out
Yeah.
to make it
Yeah.
read better.
Figure that out later.
Right.
So on the next page, So I think we should leave create a means to remove a subcommittee member for reasons other than absences. We were almost in that situation not that long ago with another committee, and the person resigned, thankfully. But there can be other reasons where you need to remove someone.
So in the officer section, we have a removal of officer section, and I believe it says with or without cause.
Okay, but this is not
But-
officers. This is people on
Right.
subcommittees, so it needs to be here
Right.
too.
Right. So you're suggesting putting in something similar like with or without cause.
Mhm.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, the same, either way, both of them should be the same, I think.
Yeah, probably so. That seems right.
Whatever wording you determine, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
And
so,
by the executive board is a little vague, and I suppose you could say it's in the PNP, but you could also say that like it's by majority vote or by unanimous vote or 2/3 vote. Like,
it's
So
that's up to the
everything,
CNs, it's up to them.
everything in this bylaws would be majority vote except for the approval of new bylaws after this goes forward.
okay,
So
so it's implicit that it would be
it's
the executive
stated
board
elsewhere,
would
yeah.
vote, would make a
Right.
majority vote to remove someone from the subcommittee.
Okay.
Right. It's another reason to have, so, and Sarah, please speak up about this if you'd like, but Sarah had gone to the county council about the officer removal, and we discussed it with her yesterday in our bylaws committee meeting, and I think you felt like this is okay, is that right, Sarah?
Yes, I will be running that by Bill Sargent in its final form, but yes.
Okay, okay, thank you. And thank you again for coming today on a Saturday. Okay, any other comments, Jeff?
I think that's what I have for now. So
Okay, Hillary, thank you for being patient.
Yeah, no problem. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Super. Okay. I just had a couple of quick questions / comments. One of it, I was going to agree with what Jeff said about no need for an email address actually in the bylaws because those can change. And then my question was like procedurally, when we're talking about committees, I heard a couple things like a slate would be put forward by a chair or people would be voted on individually. And I just was wondering about that because, for example, like the short-term rental committee was put together by a slate with the chair, and then he interviewed everybody and kind of made it balanced and put forth the slate, and people voted on the slate as a whole, versus the bylaws committee, for example, which was each individual person was voted on. And so my concern is sometimes people who are qualified to be on a committee may not be voted in by the majority, but the chair might have a better understanding of the balance that's needed to make a committee truly be balanced.
Right, and so in other parts of the bylaws where we talk about nominations and elections in Article 4, I should have probably had that one ready to go. We could pull that up. But in there, we're saying that people will be applying for positions, whether it's officer or for committee positions with and then the chair will talk to those people and interview them and then put forward the candidates. But it really is, at least for our current chairs and the bylaws are implying that really anyone qualified is going to be put forward to the membership to be able to vote on and be elected.
Okay, and then, but is that committee that's put forward, that slate, is it the slate that's voted on as a whole, or is it individual people?
Well, it's individually in terms of, like last time for the bylaws committee, we had, 6 people for 5 positions, and there's
Right.
a vote, and the numbers were able to be tallied through Zoom, so that you have the numbers that would be able to be able to count. If there are 2 people, say for an officer position, then there will be a vote and through a poll situation with Zoom. Does that answer your question?
Well, yes and no. So the officers, I
I'm gonna
understand having to vote, but as far as when you're placing a committee, I was more asking like, is the committee as a whole voted on? Like, because the bylaws was individuals, but like the short-term rental committee was voted on as a whole. And
Right.
so individual members weren't left off. And so individuals bias didn't come forward saying, oh, so-and-so is a short-term rental owner, I don't want them on the committee. So, you know, I like the fairness of having the committee put forth as a whole. I think that the short-term rental committee was a good example of how that was functional and that it was well balanced, and it wasn't all kumbaya, but we were well balanced and we worked well together because we were selected for those roles.
So you would actually like to have more definition by the chairperson of how to do a slate, because we've heard a lot of pushback on that from other people.
Yeah, I'm okay being the minority in that, but I kind of just saw what happened with when you have individuals. It's just easy for only the people who can show up on a Saturday morning to vote for that. And then people who are qualified get left off of an important committee because they didn't win a popularity vote.
Right. So this is what we see. We're getting enough questions about this. I'm pulling up what we have under our nominations and elections for Article 4 officers. And of course, with officers, the nominating committee or nominations committee will communicate a slate to the membership. But the slate may actually have 2 people in it. It's not necessarily a 1-for-1 per position kind of a slate. They may not be doing a lot of vetting. They're and the nominations are accepted from the floor as well. So and
So
then
that
they're
means it
separate.
can't be a slate.
Right. So we probably need to modify that. And then the separate voting by the members present shall be held for each office under consideration, unless there's only one candidate for office, and then you can have a voice vote. And then the winner shall be the candidate who receives the majority of the votes. They really haven't gone into that kind of detail, I guess, for electing subcommittee members, but So I'm gonna stop
I guess
sharing.
that I would just say I understand what you're saying, kind of, Hillary, and I would say that for the STR committee, I think the goal was to have it balanced, and they needed to have it balanced. And maybe in the future, there's going to be an issue that comes up again where you want to have that same thing happen, where it, for whatever reason, it needs to be balanced. There's, 2 different opinions on an issue. And I think that's what you're asking, and how would that work? And I think generally probably the wording we have now would work for most of the time just fine, except for when you have these instances where there's some polarization and you need to have it balanced. I mean, so I understand that, and that's just my comment.
Thank you.
Jeff
That's
might have a comment.
It's the balance that I am kind of trying to advocate for.
Right.
So I wonder if we need to add in something about
Can I jump in
that.
here?
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm in the So So I think we need to be very explicit about this.
Yeah.
Either it's an election and each member is voted on individually, or it's a selected group of people.
Yeah.
And I think implicitly the old bylaws say a selected group of people, and because that they're a little bit vague and give us wiggle room, when on the I think for was bylaws the only occasion when we had more people than we had spots. I think that was the only occasion where we needed to actually pick among the people, and Mark made the decision. We're just going to vote, and whoever get the 5 people who get the most votes are going to compete. I actually if our aspiration is to have balanced committees, I think that implies that the group of people is selected, and I think it should not be the chair. I think it should be the executive board that has that job.
Yeah.
Because
I agree.
Otherwise, it's a lot of work for the chair, and it's a lot of stuff on their shoulders, and and we've had issues where people didn't like the judgment of the chair. And so having it be the executive board is a little bit more accountable. So
I think that's a good idea. I like that, Jeff.
Yeah,
um,
I do too.
so I think there's a lot of value in if it's so hot that we have to choose the people. I think it's better to have the executive board choosing the people than just have it be a popularity contest myself. So, and I don't know when the next time we'll have something like STRs that has that much interest, but I mean, bylaws, we didn't see that coming. So, but
Well, and would it be the executive board or would it be a nominating committee? Because when we get to nominating committee or nominations committee, you're going to see that they're going to be formed. We're recommending that they be formed, elected at the June meeting and be serving all year. So they could actually be doing this too. Kind of more their job, right?
I guess we have it because right now the nominating committee doesn't have a job. So you could say it's their job, but so given that we will always have an executive board, and I think there will be occasions when we either don't have a nominating committee or don't have a functional nominating committee. I don't think we should make it with the nominating committee. I think we should limit the number of things we have to get people to volunteer for. So
I would agree with what you said, Jeff. Just said. I agree with that. And I just, from the chair's perspective, having to select a balanced committee, it's just way better if you have an executive committee that with more voices and more opinions, and let that group wrangle with it, and then that's what it's going to be. I mean, I personally, I like that. If that's, I think that's a better way to do it. But
Okay, do you guys kind of like this new wording? I'll get back to it here.
Gonna have to think on that.
Yeah,
If
it
you
does
have the
clarify
executive-
how they're selected.
Yeah, if you have the executive board do the vetting, then and as Jeff has said many times before, then the nominating committee actually becomes pretty much
Moot.
useless.
Yeah, right. So,
Well, I
I
think the
agree.
nominating committee still does like a lot of outreach to try to find people to do things, right?
right, they should. Mhm.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that's useless. I think they're still, it is my understanding in the past, that's what they did, was it was kind of their task with reaching out to neighbors and friends and saying, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to help? And do you want to get involved? And trying to find people to fill positions.
Mhm. Okay, well, thank you. Good input. So I think the committee will mold that further. Who else is in the chat, Susan?
Let me see here. Wyatt made a comment, if no cause is required for removal and it is discretionary with the board, shouldn't we strike with or without cause and substitute, quote, for any reason, end quote?
We could do that. With or without cause is what I tend to see in these. But yeah, is that okay with people? Any objection?
I have a quick question. Sorry. Is it fair to do that? Can you really just remove somebody who's been elected without cause?
Sometimes you don't
There-
want to have to specify the cause.
Well, then there is still a cause. Do you have to specify it?
No,
There could be any
This is
number of
phrase you do
causes.
not.
That's the problem to specify.
Right. If there's no cause, like, I'm not saying you have to specify the cause, but if somebody can just be removed from no cause, what if somebody just wakes up on the wrong side of bed and is like, yeah, I don't want them part of the NCAC anymore, they're out. Like, it sounds like they would be able to do that.
Well, then
Well,
I
it's
would
gotta
add
be
the
the law.
wording that, I would add some wording which would be as follows: can be removed by the from the subcommittee by the executive board for any reason consistent with the best interests of the committee.
Yeah, I like that better.
Say that again, Wyatt.
That was good.
I'll see if I
I
can.
liked it too.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
good.
These can
That
be,
was really good.
can be removed for any cause with the best interest of the community.
For the
No,
committee.
that's-
May
Committee.
was
be
that
removed
first
from the
word.
subcommittee by the executive board for any reason consistent with the best interests of
Yeah.
the committee.
Perfect.
That's good.
You mean committee or subcommittee?
Either one or both.
Okay, well, that's a good
Subcommittee,
point,
sorry,
Tom.
subcommittee.
Really, the NCAC, right?
No, we're not gonna be removing members, so it'd have to be from the subcommittee.
But it's the
Okay.
interest of the subcommittee. I mean, yeah,
It's
somebody
the
could be
interest,
functional
though.
and,
Yeah,
yeah,
thanks,
somebody
Tom.
could be functional in one committee and not in another.
Mm.
That's possible.
Okay, everybody okay with this? Thank you, Hillary. Any
thank you.
other, and everybody else have any other comments in the chat? Because I can't see it at the moment.
No, I do not see any other comments in the chat.
All right, well, I thought we were getting away with a lot, but this is very helpful. Thank you, everybody. Any further discussion on section 1? Okay, bylaws subcommittee. So we're now going to specify an annual review of the bylaws because we're not suggesting that they actually make changes all the time, but at least look at them annually. Should be for maintenance only unless something external really requires a change. We've moved quorum to Article 5 meetings, and so we're going to be talking about that later. We're more specific about the term bylaws subcommittee. We have more inclusive language about sources for suggested changes. We've added authorization for the creation and maintenance of a policy and procedures document, which we currently do not have in the NCAC. So we'll talk about all that. So bylaws subcommittee, the current version is the bylaws subcommittee should be composed of at least 3 and no more than 7 members. This subcommittee is responsible for reviewing changes to the bylaws suggested by the chair or the general membership. This subcommittee shall prepare reports to the general membership with recommended actions taken. So what we're adding here is that they can be changes suggested by the officers, members, and or the subcommittee members themselves. Because we kind of had a little discussion at the beginning when we were first formed about, can we really make our own suggestions? And we decided, yes, we're members, we can. And Sarah verified that that was the case. So we're going to make it explicit here. The subcommittee shall review the bylaws annually and prepare reports to the general membership with recommended actions to be taken. So it can just be a quick review, which hopefully it will be after this year, but you never know. At least they're reviewed. And then the second slide is that we're adding that members of the bylaws subcommittee may serve additional multiple terms. And a policies and procedures document shall be recommended by the bylaws subcommittee to be approved by the membership. That policies and procedures document is something that can be changed more easily than bylaws and have more detailed information than bylaws have. And so it's probably what the bylaws subcommittee will be working on next year, and possibly have a version out this year as well, because we have a number of things that we're saying to put into the policies and procedures. So an example of that would be the dates for general meetings are set as the second Saturday in each month, every other month, right? And the months are specified, but the time of the meeting would be in the policies and procedures. And just in case you're asking, the executive board can change the date of a membership meeting with adequate notice, but the meetings themselves are put in there. Or just how some of the bylaws things would be implemented in general would be in the policies and procedures. So as you've seen in these different feedback sessions, you're seeing a number of places where we're saying details to be put in the policies and procedures. So it's going to be a big job too, but it's usually something that can be done with less notice than bylaws. Okay, so we are in discussion. Susan, do we have anything in the chat?
Yes, Jeff said Do P&Ps need to be approved by county council? Is this enough detail about how P&Ps are created?
So I was thinking the same thing about the second question as we're going through. We should put a little bit more in here about what the PNPs are. And so we
Well,
can.
that's what I
we can add
wanted,
that in.
that's what I put in. I guess, Susan, you didn't see my comment. There's going to be some editorial smoothing. PNP updates are in fact, they should exist, and how they get changed is in the Article
Oh, that's
10.
right. You're right.
And so
Thank you.
this language will probably just kind of point to that.
So
there'll be
tune in
some-
on Wednesday night.
Tune in on Wednesday night, yeah. So this will probably be more directed towards information not directly contained in Article 10, but
Okay. And then the first question, Sarah, would you like to answer that question about whether you think PNP kinds of things have to go through county council?
Thank you, Nancy. My preference would be, just so there's no surprises later, I just run everything by council. I'm sure there's not going to be any issues with it, but just that extra set of eyes, I think, is always a good idea.
Sounds great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we should add that, Tom, to you and Wyatt can add that to Article 10.
okay. We'll smooth that between this and Article 10 and make sure that there's a
Right.
good transition between the two.
Sounds great. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff, for your comment. Any other comments, Susan?
No, I don't see any more in the chat.
Okay. Any other comments from anybody about the bylaws subcommittee? Okay. On to nominating committee or nominations. So basically, we've added something saying what the composition of the nominating committee is. This is brand new. Just kind of thought about this as we were getting ready for today. So welcome your comments. And then we removed the statement that the nominating committee is dissolved after a general election, because that would mean it's an ad hoc committee. So maybe we need to make it an ad hoc committee, but the advantage of keeping it a standing committee is that it could be reconvened if there's a vacancy, or if we decide that that would be a good thing for selecting or going after committee members. And then it allows for situations when a nominating subcommittee, we are allowing for situations when a nominating subcommittee cannot be established in a timely manner. So that's currently not in the bylaws. And thanks to Bill Bush for letting us know that that would be a good thing to add.
Yeah.
So the proposed wording, the new line that we just thought of, is to kind of match the bylaws committee, the beginning of the bylaws subcommittee, where they describe the number of members.
It's 3 to
We
7
say-
instead of 3 to 5.
Yeah,
This is 3 to 5
correct.
instead of 3 to
because-
7.
Right. So
you-
usually nominated committees are smaller, but that's just whatever you guys think. We could put whatever you think would be good. Seems a little high to have 7 to me, but we could do it. The nominating subcommittee shall be composed of at least 3 and no more than 5 members is the thing we're throwing out, but have at it. And then the members of the nominating subcommittee should be elected at the June annual meeting and serve a 1-year term from July 1 to June 30th. I thought we changed that to April. Oh, no, this is nominated committee, not officers. And so that again is to create something in June. They're there when ready at any time. But if we want to make it an ad hoc committee, which is kind of what the current bylaws are saying, they call it a standing committee, but standing subcommittee, but the way it's described here, it's more like an ad hoc. And then the purpose of the nominated committee is to prepare a slate of candidates for each officer position up to election that year. So do we want to change slate to list?
Yes. Because it's not a slate.
And then the last sentence, it's new, in the event of an interim vacancy in an officer position, the nominating subcommittee shall promptly submit a slate of candidates to complete the term of the vacant office.
That should be a
Yes.
list as well.
Yes, thank you. Just gonna do it. Okay, it's all new. If circumstances prevent the timely formation of a nominating subcommittee, then the executive board shall coordinate formation of a slate of candidates. List of candidates. And let me just say, before anyone says anything, Tom will edit to be consistent on capitalizations as we go forward, because I have not been. All right, and that's it for nominating committee. So any discussion on that? Anything in the chat, Susan?
Let's see. Jeff says, I think it should be ad hoc and the executive board can choose to create a nominating committee as needed.
Okay, so Jeff has 2 points here. One is to make it ad hoc and not standing. And the other is that instead of just saying this last paragraph, that it's more like the executive board can do it if they want to, but not even really try if they don't want to. Is that kind of what I'm hearing you say, Jeff?
Yep. So the conditions I think under which we want a nominating committee are when we have vacancies with no candidates, and the executive board deems it easier to find a nominating committee than to find candidates themselves, which probably usually will not be the case.
Right. So basically, I think what you're suggesting is not having a nominating committee, right?
I think
That
we
would
should
be
have
easier.
the option, like, I don't think it's wrong to have it defined in the bylaws. And I think there may be occasions when we have like a big election or a lot of vacancies where we just go, okay, this is like, we're going to put a committee in just to deal with this because this is an unusually large job. But I think more, we probably want policies and procedures where we start asking for candidates much earlier. But for the June election, we start in January. We say like, hey, we're looking for expressions of interest if you want to run for office in June. And
Well, remember, office is going to be, the election of officers will be in April now.
Okay, in April, okay, December meeting, like we'll say like April's 4 months away, but we're starting to check in. Like if you're interested in running for one of these open positions, like please let us know. And if you don't get anything, the executive board scrounges up a nominating committee to try and make sure that people are ready. But like that's when I think you want the nominating committee. You put the nominating committee in place in February to make sure that there are people who are ready to run in April if you don't have any. So, and if you don't have those conditions, it's not worth chasing down the people and having the election to form the nominating committee, because I think in 4 out of 5 cases, the nominating committee is going to be more work than having the nominating committee is going to be more work for the executive committee than not having.
So
Okay,
can I make a
does
comment?
anyone have any comments on this?
I would. The problem with having a committee which is elected, that means that's a meeting cycle. So if it's a standing committee, it's already in place. If it has to be constituted and it's elected, then you're going to burn at least one general meeting in order to get started.
So in December, you say, okay, elections, like raise your hand. If you have no hands, the executive committee in February says, okay, like here's the nominating committee, please approve them. And then that nominating committee runs around in the 2 months leading up to April to try and make sure we have candidates. That I think, and obviously, like the executive board has the option to say, we don't want to deal with this. We're gonna like set up a nominating committee from the outset. Like it just gives flexibility. Like I think having it requiring us to chase down people to fill those roles is probably unnecessary. And when for most of the year they're going to sit idle.
Okay, any other discussion on this?
And one more point. So based on my experience getting nominated and running for office, you may put in place a nominating committee and do all that work, and then the committee may not really function. So or do anything like provide added value. So that's one more thing I wanted to say. So
Okay, so I'm going to step outside of my chair role here for a moment and push back a little bit on this, because I think it's really important. I think nominating committees are important. And particularly for something like the NCAC that's had some recent times of lack of transparency and trust, I think it's important for any organization to have a separate group going out and finding people to nominate for officer positions. But particularly in this situation, I think that having a nominated committee going out there independently of the executive board is important to be looking for officers. I think it's a conflict of interest to have the officers doing their own nominations and basically serving the function of a nominating committee. I think it's really important. And I don't think it's that important on, can I finish? And then you can. So I think it's important that I don't think it's important if it's a standing committee or ad hoc. It does need to be formed early enough to be able to function. And I think the members need to be elected. But there's another advantage to having a nominating committee, and that's getting people involved in the NCAC in a different capacity that may not take as much time, but they can go out and talk to their neighbors. They can talk to other members about the NCAC and these different positions and find the best people. So it's not just trying to drum up some desperate person to be officer. It's to really engage with the community. I think there's a lot of value of having a nominating committee. And I'm okay with having the paragraph in here about if circumstances prevent it, having an out for the executive board to take over. But to not have it at all unless the executive board feels like they don't have the time to do a good job with it, to me is a real mistake. So I'm going to get off my soapbox now, and your turn, Jeff.
So two responses. One, I think nominating is a misnomer. It is a seek volunteers committee. So I think like now that I've said it, I think we should change the name, because it doesn't nominate candidates. It just tries to convince people to run, because people can nominate themselves. The committee has no part in it. And second, because people can nominate themselves and the NCAC is very open, I don't see how there's a conflict of interest. The officers can't prevent anyone from running against them. If you want to put it in the PNPs that the notifications have to go in a certain way, I think that's just like that provides some protection against officers kind of slacking off and not notifying or not notifying people about elections. Yeah, like my main beef, I think you can tell, is that I think it doesn't add a lot of value and it adds a lot of work. But like chasing down people and to get them holding elections, it's actually quite a bit of work. And I'm skeptical that the nominating committee is going to add a lot of value. In terms of you wouldn't be able to find people to be on the nominating committee, or that the nominating committee wouldn't do their job to go either
out
that
and
they
try to
wouldn't
find
volunteer
people.
or that they wouldn't really do any. They would just look like, as in the case when I ran, like they would just they would accept emails, that they would be the receptacle of emails, but they wouldn't do any trying to get candidates to go. So that might have been the case with you, but I do think a nominating committee, and thank you, Hillary, I'll call you here in a moment. I do think the nominating committee, though, I think there are a lot of people out there who would be happy to be asked. And I just went through this with another organization with the nominating committee and suggested some names to them of people to ask, and they were thrilled to be asked. They wouldn't have stepped forward if they weren't approached and asked. But and I think they'll do a great job. So anyway, Hillary and then Mark.
Thank you. Jeff, I was on board with your idea because it kind of makes sense. And then Nancy put it in a really good way about just the whole transparency issue. And I think that having the nominating committee does help with that, like she said, because sometimes people just need to be asked and they might not be as up for putting themselves out there and like proactively reaching out. But if a neighbor asks them to be involved, they might be more likely to do that. And so I like just the aspect of like the outreach part of it to the community. So I think we should keep it.
Thank you, Hillary.
Go
Mark?
ahead.
Go ahead.
Mark. Yeah.
Oh, so I just have a question. So, just so if the bylaws are adopted as you're talking about and changing the election for the officers, Nancy, to an April election, maybe next year.
Right. Yeah, not this year.
And we know the terms. I think in there is the terms and what officers are, come up for a vote, or their term ends. 2 officers in 1 year and 2 officers in the next year. So, so the nominating committee, if it's put in place, if there's an election in April, and then they're put in place, I guess a new one would be put in place in July for the following year. They would have from July to April, and they're going to be looking for nominations for officers. Is that right?
They could decide when they want to convene themselves.
Okay.
So they would be elected.
I don't. Yeah.
So they would be elected in June,
Right.
just because that would be for them, and bylaws subcommittee and any other, like the community plan and that kind of thing, would be elected in June. But then they can decide when they need to meet to start their process. But if there's a vacancy, if somebody ends up leaving an office midterm, then they would be then called upon to go find people to nominate and propose for filling that vacancy.
Right. But even if there's not a vacancy, they have, I guess what I'm saying is the work in front of them, they know the work in front of them when they take office in June, it's to present candidates for the April election. That's coming up. Right. And so there is some work to do. There's a long time span to do that. But in some regards, that's nice. I mean, you can give careful thought to who you want to talk to. Like maybe Hillary said, who you would, as a nominating person, who you'd want to ask if they'd want to consider being an officer.
Right. And they'd be trained on what the duties are of the jobs that are up for election, and be able to go out and talk to people. That's right.
Right. Okay, I'm done. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I'm going to throw in one more thing, and then I'll let it go. So Hillary said something that really lit a bulb over my head, which is that the nominating committee is going to be asking the people they know, that I mean, and it is. I don't know that that's less democratic than just sending out an email, because we would still send out the emails and anyone could join, but I think we need to point that out, that when you have a nominating committee, you have those people's networks and friends getting overrepresented in the candidate pool. So I'm still not sold that the nominating committee is good.
So that's one way to look at it. Absolutely. I mean, it kind of goes back to, you want to get a cross section of people on the committees, right? And so hopefully this cross section is going to have people that have their own individual networks of people to talk to. You'll also have the emails going out asking for people to apply.
But what we usually have is the first 3 people which takes months to get them to volunteer are the people who are on the committee. You don't and especially for something like this, which probably is not super attractive to most members of the community. So, and okay, I'm gonna stop now. I've said my bit. You know what I think.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Yes, I appreciate your passion on this, and you and I have gone around and around on this in a number of venues. So I do appreciate your coming forward and providing your feedback, and committee members, if you'd like to talk here, I know we're normally here to listen, but feel free to speak up too. So,
well, I do have something that, since you've invited it, and as much as I hate to support Jeff on this, because I do think it has value. But one of the minuses of it is the open meetings law. So if you have a group of people who are on the nominating committee, they are automatically poisoned to each other. You can't get 3 of them in one place. That makes it harder to find people and talk about it. So having them as a task force as opposed to a committee might be better. It's random thought, brand new.
That's a really good idea. Really good
Yeah,
point, I guess.
It is a good point. I think we had talked about this, Sarah, earlier, and I'm trying to remember when I was reading Oregon Public Meeting Law, I think it was really vague on that issue on whether nominating committee people could meet independently of Oregon Public Meeting Law to talk openly about candidates. Do you recall anything about this?
So I know we had a conversation, and just to Tom's point and Jeff and Hillary raising some good points. I'm wondering if, the nominating committee, is not making decisions, right? Their job is to bring candidates forward. I think that if there are some clear, if there's some clear language about their role and responsibility, and where it's clear that they are not making a decision, might be able to call them a task force. That being said, to the concerns about perhaps a bias or personal relationship, I think if you have a nominating task force, but the CAC officers are also doing, good work to really make sure the community knows that, applications and interests are being solicited. Hopefully everyone will reach out to everyone and say, hey, you'd be really good at this, or, you bring some experience or knowledge. Please throw your hat in the ring with the nominating task force. So I think there's some ways you can address the concerns that I think are valid. And if you want to put together some language to call it a task force with those roles and responsibilities, I'll run it by council.
Okay,
Yeah.
what a thought. Okay, and so if it's a task force, then it might be easier to do what Jeff's suggesting of convening it or not convening it.
Yeah, convening
from year to year.
instant conventions and instant dispersal. That's a departure from the previous bylaws, but we tried not to do that. But I think it's okay in this case.
Yeah, that might solve it. Thank you, Sarah. So then these members wouldn't necessarily be elected to a task force, correct? Or I guess because in the only other task force I know of right now would be the communications coordinators under the secretary. The secretary picks them. In this case, would we be saying that the NCAC chair or the executive board would choose the nominating committee then and not take it to election? Or nominating task force, excuse me.
I have thoughts which are half baked at the moment, but if you're interested.
Yes.
So I think the fact that a task force does not have to be convened or not have to be approved, like I hadn't even been thinking about that, but that is an additional bonus, as Tom said. And I think what you're really describing there is the executive board wants help with the election and just says in probably either in December or in February, if you would if you don't want to run for office, but you would like to help us generate interest in running for these positions, we're gonna have a task force and anyone can join. And probably that task force maybe needs to be chaired by one of the officers or something. I don't know, or maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
Maybe it doesn't. Yeah.
But I think just having sort of saying if you don't want to run, but you want to try and convince your neighbors to run, that's helpful, and having some structure for that, which maybe that can just be in the PNPs. I don't know. Maybe that doesn't need to be in the bylaws, but that sounds much better, where it's instead of like requiring the officers to kind of jump through all the hoops to put this committee in place, and then maybe it does a good job and maybe it doesn't. Just giving us the flexibility to ask for help and try and engage the community in working on it. That seems really positive. So
Yeah, that's going to require some major surgery to this, but
It is.
Yeah.
That might be good for feedback session number 9 to come back.
yeah,
The
that's
thought crossed my mind when you suggested, Jeff, possibly renaming it, and the word that came to mind is recruiting subcommittee.
mhm.
a recruiting task force.
Yeah,
Correct.
I
Sorry for coming up with that late, but
yeah. No, I think by bringing that up, Tom, that really kind of, because the big issue is being able to do anything confidentially if they're vetting, but
yeah, my major concern was, well, first of all, the idea is that you preserve what's there and just improve it as you can. And that's what we're trying to do with the bylaws.
right.
So we're trying to preserve the nature of that subcommittee as it was defined. But there was a lot of, and I agree with Jeff, there's a lot of overhead to that could be a barrier for us getting people. And we don't need to create more barriers. We have enough, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And Sarah's writing, this is why feedback sessions are so good. Great discussions. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for helping us out with them.
Chair, could you ask whether or not people think task force is a bad idea?
Yeah.
Does anybody think it's a bad idea?
Good question, Tom. Thank you. Does anyone think this is a bad idea? It's your chance to talk. Anybody? And we can't see hands, so please put in the chat if you.
I saw Sarah raise her hand.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to say, the county itself has formed task force on occasion. So I think that this aligns with the structure of different working groups that we have.
Okay, thank you. And Hillary says, I like recruitment task force. So
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all. I think this has been very productive. And Jeff, you're happy?
Yeah, this I like this a lot.
Okay, good. I like that you like it.
Yeah, we like making Jeff happy is a good thing.
And Bill is saying recruitment would be better. Recruitment task force. So we
I think
will.
our
we will look at that.
recruitalization.
Okay, so but now it doesn't have to be consistent with subcommittee.
Major surgery.
All right, thank you, Bill. Anything else? All right, so I think the rest of it could stay probably, but again, we'll bring this back. I think we're going to have, like you said, Tom, yesterday, that we're going to have a feedback session number 9 to talk about some of these things that have come out that's a little more complicated. I just don't know that we'd be ready for the date we earmarked of the 23rd. So I think we're going to have to probably do something like a week after that.
Yeah, I didn't announce that date, so
I know.
you can
Thank
pick
you.
any day
You
you
saw
want.
ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nancy Wyatt has suggested in the chat considering leadership task force.
Oh, that's nice. Any objection to that, people?
Except sometimes we're looking for subcommittee members, but
Yeah,
leadership is
that's another advantage of the task force is we can use it to get subcommittees together too. So.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Hillary says prefer recruitment in the chat.
okay, so we will take this back. Tom and I will take this back and work on it to bring back to the committee, the subcommittee. Actually, I don't know, we may have to have a special subcommittee meeting. I don't think we have to, but we do need to bring it back for the 9th. All right. No objection to the interim vacancy stuff and the okay, so this actually becomes kind of moot.
Yeah.
Okay, other subcommittees. We're just clarifying that there's a term of service for other subcommittees and needed to say where this documentation resides. And this will become more clear as Tom builds the overall bylaws draft. There's gonna be a bunch of stuff that just kind of moves around as you're seeing. So, this part is other subcommittees. So other standing or ad hoc subcommittees may be established as needed by the membership. The purpose and the time of the subcommittee should be established at the time of formation. So the only thing we've added here is standing or ad hoc, to just say that there are two different kinds. And then we added the purpose, composition, and operations of additional subcommittees should be included in the policies and procedures. If those subcommittees complete their purpose, references to it may be deleted from the PNP. To that committee would be deleted from the PNP. And that's really it for other subcommittees. Any discussion? Looks like.
Jeff writes, I have an idea for another standing subcommittee. I don't know if this is the right venue.
It would be actually.
Yes.
So
Okay,
are you
good.
thinking the community plan?
No, I'm thinking, well, because once that's done, that will not be standing anymore. I'm thinking an outreach subcommittee, which is
Oh, yes.
specifically to try and get more people to participate in the NCAC.
Fabulous
Yes.
idea.
Yes, in fact, we've talked about that in some of our others. So thank you, Jeff. I think that's a great idea. Outreach, remember, at one point we had marketing, but outreach sounds better.
Outreach sounds best.
Yeah.
I like that.
So let me,
Just put outreach someplace and we'll figure it out.
Mhm.
why did I do that one?
And you're listing of the types of the standing committees.
Yeah, I did the wrong slide. Undo that.
Down a couple. There. Just add outreach.
So
And we
then
don't
we
have
can,
to,
we can
we don't
flesh
have to
that out.
violate grammar. Yay.
That's true. Okay, thank you, Jeff. That's a great addition, because we've talked about needing it, and I don't know why we didn't think about that earlier, so just been a little
Because
busy, I
we've
guess.
been lazy.
We've been, yeah.
You have certainly
Okay.
not been lazy.
No, that's great. So thank you. We actually have some notes on that from membership. Yeah, membership, I think. So our Article 3. All right, thank you. We will flesh that out. And Jeff, if you have any ideas for that, please, or anybody else, please email us. Tom and I will take a look at that as we go forward here.
Do we have
Excellent.
any notice, Jeff? Do we have any notices going out soon?
I was planning to send one out as a reminder for Sarah's meeting on Tuesday.
Maybe we can put a paragraph somewhere in there saying that we're looking to define what an outreach committee would look like, and any ideas would be very welcome. Or would you rather not dilute the message?
Well, I think that's fine to add. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but but I'm not.
It's
I don't.
a way.
Yeah, I don't have any opposition if you can get me the paragraph by Monday. But
Okay, fair
Yeah,
enough.
let's talk about
in
that.
fact, let's say by tomorrow. Because
Yeah. let's talk
Nancy
about it.
Wyatt has put a comment in the chat. He's
Okay.
suggesting combining the responsibilities of recruitment and outreach, stating we do not have unlimited manpower.
And that's a good thought, Wyatt. I think we've had stuff come up about outreach. I mean, it is interesting in a way they're related. We've certainly had a lot of discussions about how do we reach the members that are not currently involved with the NCAC. And, part of that is Jeff's group and Jeff personally going out and posting notices and sending out emails and that kind of thing. But how can we do more of a marketing campaign on getting people involved? And really, a lot of that is kind of similar, isn't it, of trying to find people to volunteer
yeah, I
for
think that
committees
actually,
and officers.
there's a lot to be said for combining those because it is fairly similar.
Yeah, I would rather have them different because their tour of duty may be different. Outreach is more ongoing than recruitment, which is very episodic.
Right, but the outreach committee, like the outreach committee could have like 9 months of the year, you try to figure out how to get more people to attend meetings. And then 3 months of the year, you try to get people to run for offices. Like it's I think there's a certain amount of consistency there.
So I think the beauty of the task force was that they didn't have to follow OPML. They could sit there and talk about who they're not doing a lot of
exclusive.
vetting, so it's not the traditional thing.
Yeah,
So
they're not
both
mutually
of-
exclusive.
Hillary just posted a comment in the chat. She wrote, I think sharing info in Nesquin Facebook group and Nextdoor could help expand outreach.
Yes, I agree. And there are a couple of other things too, right? But I guess I hadn't even heard about the Nextdoor one, but that makes sense. I've seen the Nesquin Facebook page, thanks to Susan.
So
And
I
yeah,
think
and
the
then the
outreach-
NCA. And I know you guys are already reaching out to the NCA, putting articles in the newsletter.
So outreach could also be a task force.
Mhm.
If you combined or not,
Mm-hmm.
because it is single purpose and it is policy making.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're getting into just all sorts of fun stuff here. Okay.
Why
Yeah.
would we need task forces? That's we asked that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to say that Tom and I will follow up on this and get back to everybody. But if you have further thoughts, please don't hesitate to let us know. Boy, a lot coming out today that I wasn't expecting. This has really been good.
Should we
So
add
thank you.
Say again?
Should we add a provision to allow like a way for task force chairs to be on the executive board, or like that they attend those meetings or something?
So we
Yeah,
had
well,
that discussion about your task force, Jeff. And you kind of felt like for you, it would be, they're reporting to the secretary specifically.
Right.
So you didn't feel like they
Yes.
needed to be, they'd be kind of an ad hoc group.
Right.
If
So
we start
that
getting a
specific case,
chair
yeah.
of a task force, would that be okay, Sarah, in terms of keeping us from needing to do OPML if the chair reports on the executive board?
Can you repeat that one more time, Nancy?
Yeah, sorry, Sarah, I'm
No,
putting you on the
excuse me.
spot here.
No, it's okay.
So if we had a task force with a chair and they're not following Oregon Public Meeting Law because they're kind of task oriented here, would it be okay to have their chair be represented on the executive board like the subcommittee chairs are?
I don't see why not. Because you're
Okay.
going to want them there anyway to do any reporting, right? I
Right,
mean, that's
right.
where that you're really going to be able to be transparent and demonstrate
Mhm.
transparency with those updates.
Yeah,
I don't see why not. Go ahead, and if you want to write it in, again, I'll make a note of that here on the side. But
Okay.
I don't see an issue with that.
okay, thank you very much. It is so
Mhm.
helpful for you to be here. Thank you.
Oh,
thank
yeah,
you.
absolutely.
Okay. Okay, Jeff, I think I've captured that there. Good thought. Thank you. We'll amend Article 6, Wyatt, to include that. Does that sound okay with you? Put you on the spot, Wyatt. Okay. Are you there, Wyatt?
He is. He's
I'm
muted.
here.
Okay. Okay with you if we include that on Article 6?
Absolutely.
Okay. Great discussion. Good discussion. Okay. I think we're down here now. Any other discussions on other subcommittees and task forces? I guess we're now calling Article 7 and task forces.
yeah, that's what I already figured out. Major surgery.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Related sections is quorum. The quorum is the same as for any group that's not for the entire membership, and that it's the minimum, the quorum is the minimum number of members to present, to discuss business and to vote, and it would be a majority of the subcommittee members I don't know if it's relevant for a task force. They're not voting, right? They're not voting, so it's not relevant for a task force, but. And that's in Article 5. And then related section is conflict of interest, which we've discussed before for Article 5, but basically subcommittee members are also needing to follow conflict of interest rules. And as we've talked about in other such sections like executive board and meetings, Article 5, we've need to define conflict of interest, and that will be discussed Wednesday night with Article 10 a little bit more than it is here.
Yeah, Article 10, yeah.
Okay, and then voting. Tom said to me this morning, is voting for subcommittees in Article 5? And I said yes, blithely, and then I went back and looked, and not really. So I did come up with a little paragraph in Article 5 to basically say that voting in executive board and subcommittees would be a majority vote of the members present. So just a very simple sentence because we don't have anything. So thank you, Tom. I don't think there's anything unusual. It basically says that elsewhere for any voting is, except for the bylaws amendments, is a majority, but it specifically talks about officers and NCAC members as opposed to these. So we'll make a quick adjustment there. All right. So any other comments on any of this?
Yes, Jeff has a comment in the chat. I think a subcommittee should be able to choose to operate by consensus.
And in a sense, Jeff, you're right. I think in a sense that a vote by consensus is usually all hands raised, and it's, you know, if it's consensus like that. And that's certainly how our subcommittee seems to be working. I don't think we've had anything where there's 1 against 5 or 1 against 4 or anything, or 2 to 3 or anything like that. But we do take votes.
I guess I'm a little leery of implying that subcommittees need to vote, because I like it's not super important, but I would like to sort of set the culture that like we try not to vote, we try to just agree, and like we only vote when we can't agree. So
I think we can add some wording. The consensus is preferred voting if necessary.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing is that we don't want to be forced to come to a consensus, right? Because Robert's rules is about, I mean, you hope, and that's certainly the way we've been functioning, but we don't want it to be forced into a consensus situation.
Well, I guess so. 2 things. One, like you have the voting as a backup, and 2, I think a subcommittee should be able to say, we're never going to vote. We're only making decisions when we are unanimous, or when we feel like when we feel we agree. Like so, because I think that's a better way to operate when when you're taking votes and they're close, that like sometimes that's the place you are and you have to be able to work, and so the voting needs to be in there. But like I'm not saying take voting out. I'm just saying inviting committees to having the bylaws invite subcommittees to operate by consensus seems like a good thing.
Yeah, and I think that could be the P&P too. Mark?
Yeah, I sort of, I understand what Jeff's saying, but I do, I mean, I just would say that there are times when you might just vote. And I mean, I think about times that as a school board, we vote publicly on issues and we don't always agree. But we always support the decision that's made.
Like I said,
we always, yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, I know you're not
leave
saying
vote
to take it out. Yeah, I know. Yeah,
The
I
other
get it.
thing is that a vote will sometimes just formalize a little bit about a decision. Like yesterday, we probably had more motions than we've had ever, just to be able to recommend moving our recommendations along to either a feedback session or into the draft bylaws. And it's in the minutes and it's like we've made a decision. So it doesn't mean we won't revisit it, but like we're going to on this now based coming out of the feedback session. But it's just it gets a gauge
Mhm.
of how people are feeling when they may not actually speak up. So I hear you though. We'll go back and talk about that too. So let me go ahead and note something about consensus. I'm misspelling this. How do you spell consent? Oh, it's yes. Drawing a blank. Okay.
I think
All
I have
right.
your philosophy. I think I can craft something for that, Jeff.
Well, let's talk about it though, because I'm
Yeah,
not
well, I
sure
mean, we're
Jeff and
gonna
I
have
are
to
on the
look
same
at,
page. Yeah.
yeah, well, we can, I think I can represent that viewpoint and then
Yeah.
we will discuss it. Yes,
Perfect. Sounds good. Yeah, I certainly get your
that's what I
viewpoint, and
meant to say.
thank you. And I agree with the intention. I'm not saying that. I think when committees can work that way, it's best for sure. Okay. All right. Well, any other discussion on any of this? Are you okay with the? I mean, thank you. I mean, that we've really come out with a lot of thought-provoking changes that are pretty major, as Tom says, are rewrites. So
Yeah, I thought this was going to be a sleeper.
I did too, frankly. I did too. I thought we'll be out in 45 minutes.
I think the
But-
conversations have been just wonderful though. So all
Yeah.
the different viewpoints and stuff, it's been great. So yeah.
They have, thank you. And no mention or very little mention of membership. So yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so since we have you though, and since we're talking an article, a 9th feedback session to talk about some of these things that we're going to come back with, could we just bother you for a little bit longer to talk about potential dates? So our bylaws committee doesn't meet again until the 5th. But we're looking at having a presentation to the membership on the bylaws at the April meeting, general meeting, which is on the 13th. So I'm wondering, just logistically, bylaws committee members that are here, could we handle some of this through email discussion, or do we need to set up a special bylaws committee meeting?
What about
to
the
talk about
date that
this?
what about the date we set aside for the extra feedback? We use that date for ourselves.
We could.
I would
actually.
recommend that. Yeah.
Because we haven't publicized it yet, but we could
Yeah.
use it for ourselves, which
let me
is
know so I can-
Saturday, the 23rd.
Mhm.
That's, yeah.
So
What
it's
time
pretty-
is that at, Nancy?
It's at 2.
Okay.
It's next Saturday though, and do you think, Tom, we're gonna be ready for it by then? Because we'd have to really go through all of the different bylaws and figure out where we're seeing, I guess we could come back certainly on this Article 7 stuff, but
Yeah, before today, I think I would have been more confident.
yeah, I think we could
What
set it
you
up
want
as
to
a
have.
regular bylaws committee meeting, though. We set
Yeah,
it up
that's
as
what I'm
a
saying. A bylaws committee
special
meeting.
bylaws committee meeting rather than on a Friday morning.
Yeah.
We do the Saturday
Mhm.
afternoon. Any objection, committee members? And
No, on the
Sarah?
23rd, you're suggesting?
Right.
Yeah.
I
We've
may,
kind of had earmarked that.
yes, Nancy, I'm so sorry. And I actually had something come up. I may have a conflict.
Okay,
If I am unable to attend that, I'm going to send you my comments
Okay.
beforehand. Just because I also, based on our meeting the other day, I do have some
Yes.
more homework with county council. So
Okay.
if I can't make it, I'll send you what I have before then.
Okay, I appreciate that. And an
Yeah.
alternative would be that we set it up for Friday morning, the 29th, which would be a week before the normally scheduled bylaws committee meeting.
Yeah,
And
Nancy, I've
not as a
got
feedback
mandatory fire
session.
department training the whole weekend of the 23rd and 24th.
Okay, so that doesn't work at all. So how about the 29th in the morning at our regularly scheduled
Can
bylaws
I,
committee meetings?
Hop in here?
Yes.
It would be really, really great if you can firmly commit to being ready for the April 9th, 13th meeting on the executive board meeting on the 27th.
Yes.
So if
We will-
you're not going to meet between now and the 27th, can you commit?
Right.
So
Yeah, we could certainly commit to having our bylaws ready to present. We're not presenting them, as I understand it from our last executive board meeting, we wouldn't be presenting them for actual approval. At that point, we were going to do May 11th for that,
But it should be
we
a
could certainly
tentatively
present
final
them.
draft, right?
Right.
Like
So
the
really-
expectation is that what
Right,
you show plus whatever, and yeah, what you show is going to be voted on plus whatever
Right.
that's come from the floor. So
right. So I would suggest that we do a special bylaws committee meeting on the 29th in the morning at 9:30, our usual time. And
only
to go over
challenge-
these.
Sorry, the only challenge with the 29th is it's Good Friday.
Okay. So is that something that we could do in the morning that wouldn't interfere with any services?
I'm
Anyone have
flexible
a
either way.
conflict with it?
I guess that's the important question.
No conflict.
We could start at 9 instead of 9:30. Get early.
I would prefer 9:30.
9:30,
Maybe-
okay,
Ask Bill and Michael.
right. Okay, but nobody else. Okay, let's tentatively do that. Then I'll send out a note to each of you independently, but let's go ahead and do the
9:30.
29th, and then we will be ready with all of these different things and have taken a crack at the overall document. But we'll have Article 7 to talk about.
Mhm.
And then perhaps we do a feedback session. I guess Easter Sunday is the 31st, so that's probably not a good weekend to have a feedback session. We could do a feedback session maybe the following Wednesday night. I can't
The
do
3rd.
The 3rd.
Yeah, I can make that work. And then that gives you a week to do any final work before the general meeting.
Right. How about
I'm
the
gonna
4th?
put that on my calendar now.
How about the
For the
4th?
4th.
I have
Um,
something on the 3rd.
Mm.
Or the 2nd.
I think
Any-
I can make any one of those, the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th work. The 4th is usually our obligation for planning commission hearing packets or
Okay,
posting, because typically we have a hearing the following Thursday. If I'm late, it's because we were wrapping up to get everything posted. So,
Okay.
but I could make that work too.
so any objections to having a feedback session, a final feedback session on Tuesday, the 2nd, April 2nd
At what
Sure.
time?
at 7?
I have no conflict.
None for me.
Okay, any of you guests that tend to come to these, any conflicts with Tuesday, the 7th? 2nd,
The
sorry.
second,
I will probably not be able to make that. It's not definite, but it's a good chance I will.
Okay, well,
I think I can be there.
But I
Okay.
don't think you should schedule based on me.
Okay, well, we'll get the documents to you early.
Barbara Triplett in the chat said it was good. It's good for her.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. You guys are important for that. Okay, so let's tentatively say the 2nd, unless there are any objections, we'll do the 2nd for the feedback session and the 22nd in the morning at 9:30 to do a wrap up. That
Yep.
is what we said, right? No, the 29th, sorry, the
29th.
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 Okay, thank you for that. And that's making me feel a lot more comfortable that having 3 weeks between our bylaws committee meetings, and I'm going to keep the one on the 5th just in case, but we may be able to cancel that one. Okay, I guess I'm still sharing, aren't I? I can stop that. Thank you guys very, very much. Any other comments? Please feel
Can
free
I-
to contact us too. Yes, Jeff?
So for the 4 of you here who are on the bylaws committee, and for Mark, just to sort of put this in your mind, you will need to decide in the relatively near future whether you want to be on the bylaws committee again next year.
And
So
I am hoping all of us, now, we would get elected in June.
right. So we'll probably announce it in April, and also we'll be inviting other people that they can
Right.
that if they want to serve, like, because we need to put that out there. So
I think we
Thank
just
you.
heard from our recruitment task force.
Well, right now I am the recruitment task force.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm certainly hoping everybody will apply again, and any of the other people who are coming, we'll have policies and procedures to do for sure next
Yeah.
year. So, but it won't be as intense as this year.
You've
Nancy,
said that before.
Uh-huh.
do we have a meeting on the 20th at night?
Yes,
I
we
have-
do.
Okay, so,
The-
and I
the
need
next-
to, am I leaving that on? We are having that, is that correct?
Yes, that is, thank you. That is, usually I go over that, sorry. Yes, that is Article 10 will be discussed on Wednesday night.
Perfect.
And I would say, I think it's going to be short, but after today, I'm not going to say that.
And I sent Commissioner Olson a calendar hold for the
Thank
2
you.
new meeting dates.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's been great having him attend a lot of these. So
Yeah.
I will, we'll, in fact, I think very shortly, if we don't already, they may already be in there. The packet for Wednesday night, I believe, is in there, right, Tom?
Yeah,
the
I will have
folder.
I think I've got a correction, so there'll be an
Okay.
update, but
Okay, great. All right, thank you all, and I hope you're enjoying the sun there, Hillary. It looks nice. And
it's
Okay.
glorious.
Very
Yeah.
nice out today.
Okay, well, thanks for all this great stuff today, and go enjoy the rest of the fabulous weather, everybody. I'm going to stop recording and meeting adjourned.
Okay, bye.
But
Thank you.
Thank you all.